Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today we're going to continue talking about the Storaxa NAS. It is our June update, June the 22nd, 2023, and I would say since our last video there has been a lot of individual micro updates. Now I say micro updates because when it comes to a project of this scale, I think what people want to see is dynamicism. They want to hear that the company is still alive and that they are doing stuff. So although each of these updates in of themselves isn't actually that big, I would argue for some users it's actually better that we see constant dribbles of information rather than like one big update per month. But we will be going through each of the little bits and bobs of information that have come up, because although it's mostly positive, I am going to say that there are a couple little red flags that popped up along the way that are worth discussing. But where we were up to last month when we were talking about this, they were talking about the final board for the Intel entry-level controller board going inside the Storaxa there. And they're also talking a little bit more about that business regarding the internal PSU suddenly becoming an external PSU. Now, there was detractors, and again, that stated that this system, they should have known very early on that it was going to be an external PSU, and therefore a lot of users who don't like external PSUs, and frankly I don't mind them actually, I prefer them, easier to replace, was certainly not happy about the idea of the PSU being swapped over, especially when it turned out they'd already ordered additional PSUs to have on a shelf if ever they needed it there. Again, Storaxa did state that they were happy to start talking about issuing refunds on those before the 10th of June, which is of course passed at this point. But one thing I will mention, and again, I'm not the only one that has touched on this, it is now the 22nd of June. Where is the case? Because right now they've been talking consistently, and you'll see in the updates, a lot of it to do with the controller board. And of course, there are a lot of different revisions out there. And they, as stated in their update from the 22nd of May, so a month ago, they did state that the plan was always to have one single all-encompassing case that they could utilize each of the individual boards inside. And although the change of that PSU has adapted over time to be an external PSU for reasons of scale and them talking about the advantages it brings to air circulation and heat dissipation, something we talked about here on the channel before, even now, despite them saying that the case sample will be ready in the week of June 5th, we've still not seen it. We've seen the case several times in the initial presentation of the Storaxa, but again, that might just be the same case. So if you are watching this Storaxa, please in your next update show off that case. If you've got it, flaunt it. A lot of users who are following these updates quite avidly for their products, some of which have spent quite a lot of money on both the system itself and the additional drives. If your targeted date is still the end of July, which again, most Kickstarters always deliver late anyway, I think that's a fairly consistent thread people have observed. But still, if you are trying to stick to this early July release and it's the 22nd of June, surely you have the case knocking around now, and you've at least, if you've not gone down mass production, and of course you do have these lovely CAD designs here, but still nonetheless, please show more images of this case. Now, circling back round to that question mark around the external PSU, there were some users that were highlighting that why wouldn't the brand just go ahead with a USB Type-C connector there for that power connection? And, not to defend Storaxa directly, because we're trying to remain as independent as possible, that probably would require quite a substantial change in design along the way. And although I have already said that a lot of these decisions should have been ironed out very early on during development, I think that would be quite a hefty change to make at this stage. And again, as mentioned, a lot of people aren't overly keen on external power supplies, and Storaxa, to their credit, have been responding quite promptly to a lot of questions on rotation. And with regards to the updates, again, lots of updates, but smaller micro updates overall. So again, I'm not too fussed about the external PSU there, but I understand I'm by no means speaking on behalf of everyone. Moving away from the PSUs, we can talk about development of the controller boards, and in one of their updates around about 15 days ago, they were talking about how the AMD board was ready, and they show production runs of that PCB for the 5825 processor there. Unfortunately, not too long later on the 19th of June, they did highlight that they did see issues regarding the M2 NVMe connected slots on the top, and they isolated it down to this component chip here on the PCB, and they do say they are working on resolution of that. Again, would have liked to have seen the case, would have liked to have seen a more complete version of it, but we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt, at least for now. Another thing that was touched on in our update from 15 days ago, give or take, was the matter of the SD card that was part of the 5th stretch goal on the Storaxa project. This was going to be an SD card that had the system OS, the layout of Proxmox, and indeed the NAS software that was going to be on board, ready as a recovery drive when you needed it on the system. However, they did go on to say that ultimately, because there's a lot of different configurations of the way people want to utilize it, they're not going to be supplying it on that SD card. They are stating that they going to provide it via a downloadable image form along with guides on their own website, and a lot of people are requesting written guides there. We'll have to see how that pans out, but they will state that they will be publishing videos on their own YouTube channel for guides and kind of walkthroughs on setting up the system, but we will return to the subject of their YouTube channel just shortly. Another question mark that came up during our previous video was to do with arrowtrack.com. This is the company that is effectively producing the Storaxa. Storaxa is the solution and ArrowTrack is the company above it. Now, a lot of question marks were floating around about the domain because it seemed like it was going to expire at any time. And despite the Storaxa group being told repeatedly about the age on that domain, they didn't seem to be acknowledging it too promptly. Well, I can confirm right now that it has been renewed. It has only been renewed for a year on there, but then if you're going for a renewal system there, a 1-year renewal on rotation isn't unheard of, so I'm not going to give them too much criticism for that. But I will say that it did seem really odd that they'd let that overrun as much as they had, given it is their company domain there. Outside of the usual production that people are waiting for updates on and Storaxa sharing information about the development of the product, I would say that the only other thing that's been really causing anything of a big stir on the updates during this Kickstarter's campaign has been the matter of the delivery test. Now, I don't think I touched on this in the previous video, but because I think it came about shortly afterwards, that Storaxa are saying that a courier company that they've been in contact with for the shipping globally of this product has given them incredible rates, they're saying there. But in order for them to verify whether they can actually deliver on that, what they want to be able to do is utilize, remember that stretch goal we mentioned earlier with the SD card? They want to ship everyone's SD cards early and ship it to them to their intended addresses there. Now, there is, good reason for that. One could say you want to know that this courier company actually can deliver, and you're still talking about 5,000 or so destinations. But at the same time, there is the argument that sending a small SD card in a padded envelope with an accumulated value maybe of $8 at most, comparing that against shipping a device that's worth thousands of pounds with logistics, with the price, and also wanting to know that the tax will be taken care of fine, as Storaxa have said that it will be done, it's a slightly different story. Now, I've gone through the comments, and again, I'm more than happy to be wrong about this, but I've not found anywhere to date the name of this company. And I understand that Storaxa might not want to give attention to a company until they've 100% confirmed it, but if they're going down the road of shipping these anyway, I'm surprised Storaxa haven't actually highlighted who is the shipping company that's sending this out. Again, could be nothing, but it seems odd to me that there's so much discussion around the reasoning behind sending an SD card to everyone to prove that the logistic company is legit, but at the same time, not knowing the name of that company. Again, if I'm wrong, I've scoured the comments. I don't think I could find it there. I'm happy to be wrong. But even when you move along that, they are proceeding with this. This is the update from the 19th of June, so just a handful of days ago. And again, this isn't the first time they've done a shipping test. Very early in the Storaxa's kind of development. I think this was just prior to Pledgebox, them having the Pledgebox involvement there. They did talk about how they did a test ship with a user down here. Again, down there, Jasmine S. So if that is you, name check for you. But I've not really heard much more about that afterwards. This user did confirm that it did arrive, the shipment, it did arrive with them. But again, if we could hear more on that, that would be fantastic. And moving forward from that, there are some users say on Reddit, and again, one might argue this is hyper paranoid, but one might also argue without knowing the full details of how the background mechanics works. It is understandable that some of us might wonder about that, and there's been some users just raising the fact that could this, in a worst case scenario, be something that would cross the road into Stripe? As mentioned in a previous video, 50% of the funds were held back, and it was Storaxa themselves that volunteered this information to users in their defense. But again, something like this, would it be something that could release some of those funds? And again, it's probably quite unlikely, but at the same time, some users have kind of said that they have sort of pinged the payment holder there just to make sure this is all being noted. Overall, this all adds up together to me believing that the odds of it actually being shipped out by the end of July is pretty slim for me. They have stated in their most recent updates that they're still targeting the end of July, and whether that only really aims at the kind of entry Intel, that Pentium series processor there, and all of the bigger boy units are going to have to wait a little bit longer, who knows? But I would say, although it's not hugely surprising that this is going to be late, because let's face it, Kickstarters, you're not buying an eBay, you're not going to Amazon, you're not going to Newegg or B&H. This is very much a crowd-funded project on the go. Despite all of that, though, I would still like to see a little bit more of clarity on the delivery of this unit, particularly as mentioned, when we've not really seen much of the case. We've seen the odd board run, but I want to see more of the case for something that they maintain, until recently at least, that this is something arriving or shipping from them in around about a month or so. And that seems to me, if the case hasn't arrived and they're already talked about changing the PSU, I don't think that means that this unit is going to be firing out of their doors at the end of July. But hopefully they'll surprise me. I want to be wrong on this. I want to be wrong. But apart from that, that is your Storaxa update for June. The only other thing I wanted to talk about was another NAS Kickstarter that apparently will be coming very, very soon. Again, it's incredibly early doors. And it's this one here, the Cirko. And this is a user that got in touch with me about their Kickstarter, and they're currently working on it here. They're, again, very early doors. We don't have any information about it. Although they've done an image or two there, the main website isn't live yet. But again, I don't know the size of the operation. I don't know what's going on there. I just wanted to sort of let you guys know about that one. Again, not backing it, not recommending it, not affiliated by it. But it's nice to see Kickstarters in the server world to open up that middle ground between the turnkey and the open source DIY. The more of those, the better. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a lovely week, and I'll see you next time.